And we're back. Dave, let's get into the top video game news of the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's start with big news of Stadia. It is shutting down officially. Google has officially said that they are shutting down Stadia. Users are losing access to games. They've already shut down the Stadia store. You cannot buy any new games.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Which
will,
is good.
which is good. They're uh, I forgot to put down in the notes what day they're shutting down. I think it's definitely in January. I think it was like
Right.
January
Right.
13th or 12th or something like that. So it's definitely shutting down in mid-January, and they will officially give refunds if anybody brought like hardware and games. They're giving. I know it's definitely hardware and games. The only thing they're not going to refund is if you brought the premium service.
The
I
like
think that's the only
subscription
thing.
fee thing or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Because
they'll
that's
give you a
like
refund on the hardware.
right. And I'm glad that they're doing that and on the games too. That's really the right move. Not to say that any company would be beholden to doing that, but it's kind of it's. I've said it before. When you buy into an ecosystem, you have some sort of thought or understanding, or there's some sort of agreement between you and the company that, like, oh, the service is going to be around for a while. I'm going to dump some money into it because you guys have products for sale that I can feasibly use in your game and maybe other games for a little while. And when games get pulled like way too early, 9 times out of 10, your money's gone. Your items are gone. They're non-transferable. You can't use them. And the company's like, whatever. At least Google's doing the right thing.
The last day is January 18th.
Okay. Okay.
Stadia will be around.
Okay.
Um,
Now, I praise them in that respect, but apparently none of the developers knew that this was going to happen. So this came down from up on high, and the team, which is being like reshuffled around and whatnot, and moving on to different parts of Google or Alphabet or whatever, but they didn't know that it was shutting down. They
the
found
people,
out when the announcement happened,
well, honestly,
which is kind of apt.
the people who worked on Stadia didn't know, and the devs who were developing games for Stadia also didn't know. I mean, it was a shock to everybody. There are indie games out there that apparently, or well, rewind. Apparently, the devs are making a lot of money on Stadia, and there were some indie devs they said that their lifeblood was getting Stadia, but now that's
It
all
had the
shut down.
best revenue share, yeah.
And they're indie games. Apparently, there was one indie game. I was listening to a podcast. I don't know. It was one of the IGN podcasts. I think it was
Sure.
Game Scoop. Not too sure.
Sure.
It was like an indie developer who was developing the game for Stadia, specifically for Stadia. And now that game will never come out of Stadia. He's gonna
Yep.
have to shift focus somewhere else.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so that's crazy. I mean, what would you rather them do? I would rather than put out a internal memo that would get leaked and everybody would know anyway. I mean, they would want to tell the public before anybody working there tell the public. They wouldn't want some
No.
team member.
No,
maybe a team member tell them.
you always treat your employees right. You
I would
can't
say
you can't do that. Employees sign NDAs, employees sign agreements, contracts, whatever. So there's penalty if you do leak anything. And I mean, we'll get into
yeah,
that
but
in another story.
some. I'm sure some of them are losing it. I'm sure somebody's losing their job, right? Or somebody's going to quit. So,
Well,
and then
I'm sure a lot of
that-
people are
yeah.
leaving. I mean, if people haven't left
Yeah.
already, because it's totally mismanaged. But no matter what, you tell your team first, and you prepare your team. You don't just uproot them and whatever. I mean, I think ultimately they'll be okay because Google is a big company. These guys are smart. The devs are good. They're flexible. They'll just be moved to different parts of the company. Or maybe they'll leave, they'll be like, I want to work on something else. I like working on this game product or whatever it is, this game service thing. I want to maybe do something else. Maybe they'll go somewhere
Should
else.
it-
But
the
you can't,
writing should be on the
make it a
wall.
surprise like that. You can't.
I mean, the writing should have been on the wall. I mean, they shut down their first-party studios. They weren't really getting any.
Oh no, of course. But still,
Right?
you still got to tell your
Dude,
team first. I mean, You have to treat them with a little bit of respect, because like if I came into like work on Monday and they're like, "Step into our office. We have something to tell you," and this just kind of like came out of the blue, I'd be like, "Whoa, hey, whoa," It's
I'm not saying you
yeah.
wouldn't be shocked. I'm not saying you wouldn't be shocked. I would say, bring the team together, tell them the bad news, and then maybe like a couple of hours later or something like that, announce it to publicly.
Oh, I would say a couple of days at least, or whatever. I
No,
mean,
because then you want to, you as a company control the narrative, and then some ultimately, especially if they're going to lose their job or they know they're leaving, they're going to leak this, and then
well, I don't think anyone's
you
losing
want to
their
get ahead of
job. They're just moving to other because they're just closing down that division. So
well,
they're moving them to different departments. You know.
maybe someone's patent will leave because they really want to work in gaming and they don't want to work in another department or something like that. I don't know. I think you want to control the narrative. You always run the risk of leaks, which we'll talk about leaks a little bit later in the
Well,
show.
I mean, you run the risk of a leak working on any entertainment property or whatever. Just by virtue of working on it, you were in the bit and you have things, but you signed agreements to say, "Hey, don't do this thing."
So,
So
so,
you know.
so I did put an asterisk early
Mhm.
games that are coming out this month about Resident Evil Village, the expansion. They did have it listed coming out on Stadia. Now, again, I pulled these listings before the announcement of Stadia shutting down, right?
Mhm.
So, will the expansion still come to Stadia October 28th? I don't know. Who knows? It may not.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't even think Capcom knew about it. So yeah, and it is it even worth? Because nobody's gonna buy it. No one's gonna. The expansion's not free, right? You have to pay for it.
Oh, you can't buy it, right? Because the Stadia
Oh
store is down.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not coming out
So
because
so it
Capcom's
would
just not
have
gonna put it up there in Goodwill for free,
it would have come out of Stadia, but it's not.
right?
That would
Right.
have
And
been
now it's
that would have
being
been Stadia
yeah.
release. Yeah.
So Capcom is even
Listen.
like, what the hell, you know?
So it's a good listen. The technology is good. Is I think it was just sort of mishandled, right?
Oh,
Mismanaged
it was
as a
very
lot of
much
other things at
mishandled,
Google.
and it was
Yeah,
a little bit before its
and rushed
time.
it and rushed to market and rushed to market.
A little bit, a little bit. Yeah, it wasn't quite
Right?
ready at the time, and I don't think people were also ready to make the jump to not even just all digital, but all streaming, right? Because you got to have a
No.
really good internet connection to get the best experience out of it, which not everybody has necessarily. Not everybody has like the setup. Well, I guess you could play it on anything. You could play it on a TV, I guess, if you wanted to. But yeah,
I
people just weren't ready for it, you know. And they've been
I stand
trying this.
by.
They've been
Oh well,
trying
I mean,
this for the last 20, 30 years almost. 20 years. Started with
oh yeah.
OnLive. OnLive was the first service I remember. They're like,
I remember on live.
it was just a little box. You hooked it up with your Ethernet connection. Had HDMI out, and it had a little Bluetooth connected controller. And they're like, you could stream games and play them, and it was great. And it wasn't so great. They folded pretty quickly. So
No, I remember on live. That
yeah,
was
yeah,
wow. I feel old now. I feel old.
right.
On live was a long time ago.
And I
That was a long
thought,
time ago.
I thought Stadia was like, okay, the world is ready for it now. The technology has gone
Well,
up there.
then you had
People
Gaikai.
understand.
You had Sony bought Gaikai, came PlayStation Now, and all Sony televisions used to have PlayStation Now on it. So if you had a controller, and you can stream games on any TV, it didn't matter. And I still think that's a great idea, and I think they still will do that, right?
Well,
Eventually
they
with
ended up shutting that down
PlayStation
too,
Plus.
right? Like that's not a thing
You know
anymore.
what? It ended up not being on the TVs, but you still had PlayStation Now, and you could still now stream games on PlayStation Premium. I was actually streaming that Ratchet and Clank game that didn't get a physical release in
Mhm.
America, in North America, and
Right.
I was streaming that over the summer because I didn't know if I wanted to do it for Saturday Morning Retro or
Right.
not. I didn't finish it, and I just ended up not using it for Saturday Morning Retro, which I still may go back to it.
Hmm.
And then Microsoft, you could stream games on Microsoft as well.
Microsoft has their cloud gaming, yeah, yeah, and they're like still putting money into it. It's definitely gonna happen. It's just a matter of when. You know, that's the whole thing
So
about it.
I'm gonna miss doing the segment at the end of each month saying these are the most notable games coming out next month. and saying put it on everything except for Stadia. Because
Yeah.
if there's a problem when they're putting it on a PS4, the Xbox One, and the Switch, and it's not coming to Stadia,
Hmm.
right? And one
Well,
of Stadia's bad.
you can still say it's not coming to Stadia. That fact will not change.
Well, I said it because I'm picked them up at Google, so it could come to Stadia. But one of Stadia's biggest problems is they didn't have any Stadia only like exclusives. And one of the things that came out of Stadia shutting down is Kojima actually approached Stadia about doing not necessarily a sequel to Death Stranding, but another
Mhm.
game sort of in a Death Stranding world. You know how Control isn't the Control and Alan Wake are in the same world, but they're two different games, right?
Yep.
So it could have
Yep.
been something like that. And Stadia sort of passed on it because it would have been a Stadia exclusive. Stadia passed on it because they didn't see the value in having a single player game on their streaming service, right? And now this game going, because he wanted to do something with the cloud. He wanted to do an interesting concept with like sort of streaming in a cloud service. This game is what Microsoft was now going to be on Microsoft, right? This is
Right.
the Kojima game with Microsoft that could have been
So
Stadia.
now I'm really confused because they're like, we don't want it to be single player. Oh, well, we want it to be multiplayer, and he's like, no, no, it's single player, but it's got all this cloud connected stuff. So I wonder, and I guess maybe it's kind of like what they did with Death Stranding, where the connected part was if you connected it up, you could you could use other people's contraptions in the world. So if somebody built a bridge over this like creek or whatever, it could show up in your world, and you're like, oh shoot, somebody else made this thing. I can go ahead and use it. You would never see anybody, but you would see the remnants of like what they did and where they were by like the stuff that they built. So yeah, it's probably something like
Imagine,
that.
imagine if he's doing like a horror game and it's like, somebody left you extra ammo or left you a
Mm-hmm.
machete somewhere and you
Mm-hmm.
can use it. All right.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that because all the reports say he's working on a horror game. Now he could be working on multiple projects and one is a horror project, maybe a film or game or short or demo
Well,
or some kind.
Death
All
Stranding
right.
technically is a horror game. I mean, it gets real dark.
No, I'm just saying that he all the reports said he was working on a horror game and then he went to work on something where had something to do with streaming in the cloud.
Yeah.
It
That could
goes to
be
show
that.
you
That could be like kind of cool, like dropping off packages for you before you fight a big monster.
like this could have been a Stadia if it was interesting. Let's just say if it was Death Stranding, right? People would flock to it. People would come to play the next Kojima game, and it's only on Stadia. I would even think about even going on Stadia and trying it out, right?
Right.
So
All
this
right.
was a big misstep
Yeah. I mean, if you have like a
from the
killer
get.
app, that'll definitely bring everybody over for
I
sure.
just I just want to say I think they put it out quickly. They thought maybe hey like 2 years and we can get something going and games take more than especially good games like big budget exclusive games take more than 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're looking
Sure.
at 4 years, a 4 year cycle of some kind, right? Especially when you have a brand new studio.
They did
Mm,
get they did get one
they
game
didn't
out.
wait.
They did get one game out called Guilt, Gylt. But that game is shutting down, and everybody's
Wait.
microtransaction purchases in there are done. But that was it. They had the one game that they ended up putting out, and it just wasn't that great, apparently.
I'm just I guess I'll always be right. It's coming to everything except for Stadia.